Welcome to Mental Health Momentum, a Silicon Slopes podcast. I'm Dr. David Morgan. I'm the Director of Mental Health Awareness here at Silicon Slopes and a licensed psychologist. And on this podcast, we interview guests where we talk about mental health issues in the workplace and figure out solutions to improve our mental health. And on this week's podcast, we have my guest, Andrea Beckstrom. Hello, Andrea.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Let me tell you a little bit about Andrea. She studied at the University of Utah for her undergraduate degree in nursing and her master's degree in psychiatric mental health. She loves people, knowing their stories and learning what they are about. She has a passion for making mental health care more accessible, as there has always been a lack of resources and care options available. Starting in 2008, Andrea worked for Valley Behavioral Health for over a decade, where she worked with a variety of populations, including those suffering from substance abuse and those with persistent and severe mental illness. She has worked with patients across the lifespan, from children to adults. In each of her positions as a psychiatric nurse practitioner and her personal experiences with difficulties surrounding mental health, Andrea has obtained extensive experience treating clients with a variety of disorders such as anxiety, depression, eating disorders, bipolar disorder, and schizophrenia. She enjoys traveling and exploring new places with her husband and 4 daughters. She loves spending time at the beach and skiing through the winter and doing anything where she gets the chance to move her body to make it stronger and to enjoy life to the fullest. Andrea, thank you.
Thanks.
Was that embarrassing?
No.
Okay,
great.
good. Okay, good. Some people get embarrassed by their bios. You're okay? Good.
It's okay.
I love that your wide experience with mental health. A lot of people don't get that. They don't. Schizophrenia, very low incidence rates. And so how did you do that? Where were you? What kind of setting were you in where you got to see a lot of that?
Well, I was thrown into it, not by choice, but now looking back, I'm so grateful. At the time, I thought, why did they put me in here, this naive, very new to mental health, in these most difficult treatment centers? I worked in forensics also. I'm so grateful now because I had to learn a ton. And so now when a case like that does walk through the door, when there's someone that is dealing with that severe, mental illness or substance use, we don't treat substance use where I work, but I know where to direct them and how to guide the medications that I can help with. And so that's how they just needed help in those areas at Valley Behavioral Health. So that's where they stuck me. Yeah. So it didn't make sense at the time, but it was in God's hands, truly. Yeah.
I had a similar experience. My residency was in an inpatient psychiatric hospital. And so, again, I hadn't even graduated with my doctorate yet, and I was dealing with the most severe mental illnesses, people that were stationed with us temporarily on their way to state hospitals. And so you got to see these things that you rarely get to see, which was wonderful because I ended up doing forensic work as well. We have similar backgrounds that way.
Interesting.
And then you would, once you've got a taste of the legitimate condition, when you see people that maybe think they have it, and it's, I don't know what it is, but it's so easy to tell the actual thing versus something that's just kind of a, misdiagnosis or something.
Yeah,
so,
exactly.
yeah.
So I'm very grateful for that. It's helpful.
Will you tell the listeners what it is to be a psychiatric nurse practitioner? Some people don't understand that. So, but
yeah,
yeah,
happy to. So like Dr. Morgan said, I got a master's in science in nursing, but I did the psychiatric specialty. And so the letters after my name are PMHNP. So I always laugh and tell people that is a lot of letters and you don't have to remember them, but it stands for Psychiatric Mental Health Nurse Practitioner. And so everyone says, oh, so you're a therapist. And so in school, I was trained in prescribing medication, specifically for psychiatric conditions. And we also got trained in therapy in my program. Not all programs do that or have as much therapy training, but at the University of Utah, we got both, which I'm so grateful for. And so we do have longer appointments. So we have a 60-minute initial appointment so that we can get the full background, but also give some therapy tips. Because as you know, therapy is incredible. I think everyone should engage in therapy, but medication is often needed to help and to bring some of the symptoms down to get more out of therapy. So for follow-up, we do 30-minute appointments. And the point of that is to not only discuss medications, but also, again, give therapy tips that they can incorporate and do on their own to help themselves feel better. And hopefully those skills and coping mechanisms can help them to be able to be on the lowest medication needed or come off their medication
Right.
at some point. That's our goal.
And a lot of people don't understand that. They figure, well, once I'm on medication, I have to be on medication forever. And
Mhm.
and that's rarely the case. I mean, there are some conditions like we were talking about earlier, schizophrenia, like honest to goodness bipolar disorder, where
Yes.
typically medication is going to be a necessary component, although there's still skill development that can happen
Yeah.
throughout that. But the most common mental health issues like mood disorders, anxiety disorders,
Mhm.
those are things that in many cases, medication can be helpful for a time, but it doesn't have to be forever.
Exactly. Even something like OCD,
Hmm.
medication is very helpful, to lessen the intrusive thoughts and be able to get through therapy. So a lot of people can come off medication with that disorder as well. ADHD is another one that medication can be very helpful, but sometimes people find the behavioral techniques learned in therapy sometimes do better for them than being on meds that might
Yeah,
make them not feel well. Yeah.
that's right. I always say that there's very few side effects with therapy.
Right. Right.
There's hardly any, right? Medication,
Yes.
that's one of the challenges as well, is that there's intended effects and unintended effects of medication,
Right.
and you kind of get both. So,
Yeah.
what was it that got you into mental health in the first place? Was there like any personal experiences or things where you thought, I want to be a psychiatric nurse practitioner?
Yeah. I never thought that, which I used to
You
be
didn't want
feel
6 letters after your name
no,
for the
I
rest of your whole
know.
life? Okay.
I actually was embarrassed when I was in school, to be honest with you. I was embarrassed to tell people I was learning about psychiatry. I came from an operating room background as a nurse, and then I went from sleeping patients to hearing everyone's issues and difficulties. And I just would always hear in schooling, you have to be one to treat one. So, meaning I was quote crazy, which I know that's not what mental health is.
Right, right.
Literally, they had an opening in the program and I applied, and I had not had nursing mental health experience except for my rotations in nursing school. So, like I said before, it was in God's hands because I was placed there. Now, full circle though, and what has made me a better provider is I've had my own difficulties in mental health, a lot actually. I was born anxious. I remember in kindergarten just being anxious about getting ready quick enough for school. So that's where I remember my first feeling of that. And then I kind of glided through elementary, always, well, being very perfectionistic. So I did want to get straight A's and had to be perfect at that, but I didn't feel anxious about it. It came pretty easy.
Hmm.
When I ran into difficulty was in junior high, and I was in all these honors classes, and the anxiety just started to ramp up. That's when I remember feeling uncomfortable, and friends were changing. It's a hard time. I
Sure.
feel
Your,
for
your
those that
mind's
are,
changing, your body's changing,
yeah,
everything. Yeah.
it's confusing. And so I did develop an eating disorder to try to control that anxiety. That was what I could control. It started out as orthorexia, which is healthy eating. Very strict rules, though, surrounding it, but then it turned into full-blown anorexia. And I actually didn't ever get therapy for that or on medication. My mom luckily noticed something was up and took me to an endocrinologist, so not a mental health professional.
Right.
And they said gain 20 pounds, but I still had food noise through high school. And then the perfectionism was still there. Anxiety was there, is still there, to be honest. I am grateful though now looking back because I have more compassion for my clients.
Mhm.
I can sit with them and I can say, I know how you feel. Like I have to hold back the emotion all the time because I saw a client today with an eating disorder and his mom was just in tears and I wanted to just hug them and cry right along with them because I wanted to say I've been there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so as a mom, I did have several miscarriages, a lot of late losses in my second trimester, and that brought on some situational depression. I did therapy for that. I didn't need medication. I was able to grieve and get over that, but that's hard. And then also we have ADHD in our family. My husband has it, and then I have a daughter that has it. And I think I'm thankful for the training I have every day so we
Right.
can deal with that in the right way. So, yeah, a lot. I have a lot of experience, personal, and then training.
And that's it, in many ways, it just makes you perfectly suited to, to the career that you're in. Um, because having been through those things or being closely related to people that have gone through those things, just the compassion and understanding that one develops
Mhm.
makes so much difference
Mhm.
when treating people. So,
Yeah.
well, your clients are fortunate. That's awesome.
Well, thanks. I do feel that not only does it personally, affect us dealing with these disorders, but with my husband having ADHD and me anxiety, that's kind of a rough combo. And so, yeah, to be able to see how it affects relationships and parent-child
Yeah.
relationships, it is intense. I mean, we've done therapy so that we can, yeah, navigate some of those perpetual problems that we can't fix, without some outside help.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I love being able to have that understanding for people.
Well, and Andrea and I met at a Silicon Slopes town hall where she was
Mhm.
a speaker and she talked about the benefits of healthy eating. At that time, I didn't know about your own history with
Yeah.
eating challenges. So I'm curious, and there's a difference between healthy eating and orthorexia,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, how does healthy eating promote mental health? Like, what is it? What are
In
the
so
connections?
many ways. As you heard me talk before, I love this topic, but yes, you have to be careful when talking about it because just with anything, you can take it too far,
Right,
right? And so when I talk about it with clients, that's why I love that I dealt with it because I do tread lightly. I don't say good and bad foods. I don't say
right,
just do this diet. As you heard me say, the Mediterranean diet is so beneficial for our mental health. And why? So, what that includes, a lot of people say, well, what does that even mean? I've done a lot of studying on it, and there's tons of research on it helping depression, anxiety, overall mental wellness. And it includes fish, beans, nuts, any olive oil. Those all have omega 3 and omega
right,
6 fatty acids, right? And so, what that does is it increases BDNF in our brain, another slew of letters. So that stands for brain derived neurotrophic factor. And how I explain it to patients is it is like Miracle Grow for the brain.
mm,
For anyone that gardens, Miracle Grow makes your flowers and vegetables bigger, brighter, and healthy. And that is what it does for our brain. So I recommend a fish oil supplement for all my
mhm.
patients. I don't care what disorder they're dealing with, it has benefits for everyone. So I love that. And then, of course, eating from the rainbow, leafy greens, fruits and veggies. But I don't say to cut stuff out. I
Right.
never teach to not eat sweets or anything like that. Moderation in all things. You know what feels good to your body. Um, so I also say that I like to tell people to eat and move their body to feel strong, not skinny. The goal isn't
Right.
skinny. The goal, I mean, I wish I would have known that, in eighth grade when I went through my difficulties. Oh, the rules and the workouts that I did, yeah, were just to stay so skinny. And oh, being strong is so beneficial. Another thing
Yes.
that's good for our brains.
I was, for a while, we worked with a nutritionist, and she had been trained by Dr. Benjamin Bickman at BYU,
Mm-hmm.
and he would say that, um, he'd say your diet, the way you eat, is what you do to control your weight, and you exercise to be strong.
Mm-hmm.
And he
I love
constantly talks about strong bodies, right, and that you need to have that. And he was particularly, there are some, I won't mention them by name, there are some medications that facilitate weight loss, but what they end up doing is they end up reducing a lot of lean muscle mass, which is not what you want. You don't want
right.
to lose your muscle when you are losing weight. You want
Yep.
to shrink your fat cells when you're
Yes.
losing weight.
Yes.
And so, but like you said, the goal isn't just to be skinny. The goal is to be healthy.
Yeah.
And those are two different things.
Yeah.
I remember I grew up in the 80s and would always see Richard Simmons
Mm-hmm.
on television. And he's like, the picture of health, the embodiment of health. I mean, I don't know how he really was, but he didn't look like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Right.
You know, he never had like, he wasn't like this kind of ripped guy or anything. He was healthy, but his body style just wasn't one that was going to be like, you know, the cover of GQ magazine or something like that, or
Right.
Muscle and Fitness. And so I always remember, I always thought of that as an example that healthy does not mean huge, you know, skinny, you know, svelte, you know, those
Right.
sorts of things. It can mean a lot of different things for a lot of different people.
Mm-hmm.
And body image is something that we struggle with so much though, because you don't see healthy on Instagram, right? You see,
No,
you
or
see skinny,
anywhere
right?
in marketing and anything,
Right.
it's all over, and it causes a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
hard.
Well, I want to shift gears here a little bit because we're just finishing up the holiday season,
Mm-hmm.
and I've got a mental health professional here.
Yeah.
I'm one too, but you know,
Yeah.
it's not always that there's one sitting across from me
Yeah.
in the studio. And one of the things that's a challenge for people is after the holidays is just kind of getting to this funk, you know, this post-holiday blues.
Mm-hmm.
I experience it myself at times because I love the holidays. I love Christmas, and there's so much anticipation to it.
Right.
You know, start building up months before in some cases,
Mm-hmm.
and then it happens. And I was reading something somewhere that what is actually exciting for the brain is not the event, but it's the lead up to the event. It's
Exactly.
those sorts of things that are exciting to us.
Mm-hmm.
And then you actually do the thing and you're like, okay, that was fun, but where's all the excitement? And sometimes it's a letdown because it can never be as big as you built it up in your brain. And things like Christmas are just naturally prone to that because, like I said, some people look forward to it for a long time, and it's inevitably going to be potentially disappointing for some.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some things we can do just overall to improve our mood? If there's listeners out there that are like, oh my gosh, I'm down. Christmas is over. There's 362 days until Christmas now. And
Right. What am I going to do?
exactly.
That is huge, and it's winter, right? So it's dark.
Exactly,
I mean,
yeah.
and then
We need to move Christmas to like July 25th.
exactly.
Or something, right?
Yeah, it's hard because then that ends, and then we still have a lot of cold, you know,
Right,
especially
right.
here in Utah. So a few things that are great are one is make sure you're taking vitamin D. I know I talked about that before, but
Yes.
if those levels are low, your mood can more easily tank and stay down there. So getting a level, seeing where your vitamin D is at, that's a supplement I also tell everyone to take.
So they can just go to a grocery store and just get this off the counter or over the
Yeah.
counter? Okay.
Yeah,
Just
vitamin
vitamin
D3
D pills, okay.
and 25 micrograms. I mean, talk to your provider because I'm
Sure, of
not
course,
giving
yeah.
medical advice, but that is a good place to start.
Right.
And most people in Utah are low because of our geographical location. It's not that we're in low altitude, but where we are set, you know, geographically, we just don't absorb it the same.
Interesting.
So that's huge to check.
Because we get plenty of sun here.
Plenty of sun.
But-
I mean, in the summer especially, everyone
Right,
says I'm
right.
fine, but people are still low. We do
Interesting.
not absorb it the same. Another one is move your body. So I always tell patients, before you choose your mood, choose to move. I'll say that again. Before you choose your mood, choose to move. It doesn't have to be a 45-minute HIIT program.
Right.
It can be 5 minutes. I know it's cold outside and dark. You can do that inside. You know, if it's push-ups or sit-ups, if your body can do that. I always tell people, do you have a set of weights? If they tell me no, like a light set of weights, I say, do you have tomato sauce?
Yeah,
Do you have a
exactly.
can in your
Right.
pantry? Get those, you know,
A couple
and
gallons
start
of
there.
milk or
Really.
something like that. Yeah.
And lift them. Just
Yeah.
do some arm movements. Your mood will change. I guarantee. And so that's a huge tip that I love to give people. And before you sit down and decide this day is going to be terrible, go move first and
Okay.
then get back to yourself on how your day is going to go.
Is it the things you mentioned were strength training mostly? Could it just be cardio as well? If they just
Cardio
wanted back
too.
and forth in their house
Yep.
for 10 minutes or something?
Yep, or go
Okay.
around the block. I know it's cold, but
Right.
the Norwegians say there's no bad weather, only bad clothing. So that's not an excuse.
That's true. If you have the right gear.
Yeah, put on a
Exactly,
coat.
yeah.
It's actually kind of magical out there. No one's out there. Put a beanie on and good boots and a coat, and you can go out for 10 minutes. That's another tip, actually, is getting out in the early morning time. Morning light
Right.
benefits our mood. There's something in that morning light. It shuts off our melatonin production, so it wakes you up more and boosts our mood and can decrease anxiety. It's a magical time to be outside. And so I would say do that. If you can't do that for some reason, you know, or you just really hate the cold, you can get a light that's about 10,000 lux, you know,
Mhm.
and have that at your desk, and you can start there. So that can help too.
So Okay, so this idea, I love you say, like how you said, before you choose your mood, right?
Yeah,
Because a lot of times we feel victims to that, right? We say, well, no, this
this
is
is
this
how
is
it
just the
is.
mood I get. But I think your statement is 100% correct. We do have control over that.
We do.
Um, a lot of times we are out of practice in controlling it. Like we don't realize the steps that are happening. There's a lot of these automatic steps that'll happen in our brain
Mm-hmm.
that we don't necessarily choose. Well, kind of we've chosen them 10,000 times before, so they
So
just
it's
get kind of,
easy.
so it's
Yeah,
very
our
easy to
brain
choose them
goes that
again.
way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so especially if you're having these kind of blue feelings, you're going
Mm-hmm.
to have to actively resist that. You're going to have to say, I am going to try to feel better today. I'm going to do things differently. Any
Yes.
deviation from the normal, I think triggers the brain, right? And
Yeah.
and the brain starts saying, "Oh, wait, we're not in the same old that we have been for the last 6 weeks."
Right. Right. And it's hard. I'm not saying it's easy.
Oh,
When you're in
right.
a bad spot and that can hit people really hard, that's hard. So choose one thing. I always say, if you've read Atomic Habits,
Mhm.
1% of change every day brings great outcomes,
Yeah.
great results. So if you can just do two, bicep curls with your lightweight, great, start there. And then you'll add on. And it adds up and people
Yeah.
start to change. Yeah.
And you have to be consistent in that, right? I mean, it's not just once every 2 weeks because that
Nope.
the brain doesn't adjust to that very well to that either. The
Yeah.
brain adjusts to consistency, repetition,
Yes.
frequency, those sorts of things. So
Yeah.
we have to, and the other thing is for people that are suffering from like, serious depression, these tips might not be sufficient. Like you say,
Right.
go talk to a mental health professional,
Yes.
talk to a psychiatrist or psychiatric nurse practitioner or someone. I I would prefer people get their psychiatric medications from people trained in mental health than their
Yeah.
primary care physicians, if possible.
Yeah.
I know it's tough because, like we mentioned earlier, it's demand outstrips supply
Yeah. There's
huge
not
in mental health
enough.
right now.
There's not enough.
But that's something that I think is good.
Yeah.
Let's talk about another thing with the holidays, relationships and the stress that can come from that. So we're kind of moving on from depression to
Yeah.
stress. It's hard because we sometimes we see people we haven't seen for a long time. There's like this natural demand to get together, and you feel obligated to do it. But then these relationships can be challenging. What's And on the one hand, relationships can compromise our mental health. On the other hand, they can benefit our mental health.
Right.
What kind of thoughts do you have on that?
Well, the Surgeon General a couple years
Yeah.
back, declared a state of loneliness. We
Said it
are
was an
in
epidemic.
epidemic.
Yeah.
I mean, it is at astronomical proportions. So, yeah, I know it can be overwhelming during the holidays, but one thing that connection and relationships do is release those feel good neurotransmitters, right? Oxytocin and hugging and connection and even a good conversation. Um, an intimate, good conversation can be so beneficial and lift our mood.
That's why I feel so much better after these podcasts.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, you must feel so good after. And so I know that's hard and not everyone has that, right?
Right.
And so if you're in that spot, one, I would say, I know this is hard for people, but find a therapist, first of all, to help you navigate that.
Yeah.
Or if going to see your family is causing more angst than not, I wouldn't say shut it out and not do it at all and not try. See if you can get help in that area on how to connect or how to have the right boundaries, because that connection is needed. And if it's not with your family, it can be with your friends that are your family, but definitely some in-person connection. It's just different than the texting, FaceTiming. Get some human touch, hugs, smiles, all that just is so good in person, and can really boost the mood.
With the advent that we've had in technology in the last 15, 20 years, where connection has, at least the availability for connection has increased, like you said, through texting and FaceTime and social media and things like that. But there still really is no substitute for that in-person connection. Those other things can be auxiliary to that,
Yeah.
and I think can still improve relationships.
Mm-hmm.
But if we've sacrificed in person for purely virtual, then I think we're going to miss something. I think there is something that's
Absolutely.
just not. I don't know what it is that's missing.
Well, part of it is really that touch and that
Okay.
interaction, because when you're releasing the oxytocin, that releases serotonin, I mean, the endorphins, you just feel better. So that's a huge part of it. And that's a huge part of why we can't go just phone call or just texting.
Right.
So much is so fast paced. And I feel like you slow down when you're in person. The body language is different. You just get a lot more out of it.
Yeah.
But I agree with you. Still connecting, FaceTime, Marco Polo,
Right.
Instagram, if you're careful. Those are all good supplements, but
Right.
don't let that take over the human in-person
Mhm.
connection.
I think there's there's almost a vulnerability that has to exist with the in-person connection as well, which I think is good for us
Mhm.
psychologically, right? It helps
Mhm.
break down those barriers and improve those
Exactly.
relationships. And so when we do that, then I think it, especially, and I'm not talking about, just at the grocery store or things like that, but we're
Right.
talking about a conversation with a friend. It's different to sit down with a friend in your living room and
Mhm.
have a conversation knee to knee than it is to text that exact same conversation or even have it over the phone, because there's an emotional intimacy that
Mhm.
can exist that benefits relationships, that deepens them. And we know that the deeper our relationships are, the better we are to weather difficulties, the stronger we feel.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, there's so many advantages to I guess, I don't want to say real relationships because that makes it sound like there's fake ones too. Uh, Greater, more authentic relationships, right? On
Right.
that continuum from
Right.
less authentic to more authentic, the more authentic, the more personal.
Yeah, and when you're in that real time in person, um, yeah, if someone's crying, you can cry with them or
Right.
offer a hug, and the crying also releases endorphins and smiles, laughter, all of that, which I know you can get on the phone, but there's something about that. So I would say don't shy away from that, from from attending an event, even if you're
Right.
nervous or uncomfortable. You can work through that with therapy and make sure, I mean, first of all, we have to be okay with ourselves, right? To be able to make those connections. So if you're not in a good place, check on that too. Definitely.
My wife started a thing on her Instagram where when we moved to Utah a couple of years ago,
Mm-hmm.
and we didn't have any friends here. And so she just said, anyone want to be my friend? I'm going to be at Costa Vida at this time
I
on this
love
date,
that.
and just show up if you want to come. And she brought her true crime in her headphones, just in case no one showed up, just eating tacos by herself. And it was like 30 women showed up
Wow.
who said, I need a friend too. And they started, and so she does this about every 2 months. She meets at some public location. I was terrified at first. I thought we were going to get robbed or something like
Right,
that,
right.
or something. But it's turned out into a really good thing where people are just feeling that connection, and it's terrifying for some people. They're scared,
Right.
but they leave with a friend.
Yeah.
They
And
leave
everyone
with some.
craves that.
Yes,
Everyone craves that.
yes,
Yep.
I
But it
know.
can be hard.
It's just hard.
Yep.
Everything good is difficult.
Yep.
Everything
It's
good,
true.
it requires some degree of effort that's going to put us in an uncomfortable situation.
Yep.
But rarely do we regret it afterwards. We're always like, oh, okay, I'm glad I did that.
It's
So
true. In our family, we say this phrase, I can do hard things, or
yeah,
Beckstroms do hard things, because there's a lot of hard things we have to do in life. But if you can just tell yourself that, you can say, what if it all goes well?
right,
Instead of
right,
what'll go wrong, what if it goes well? And then you'll be braver and it'll be easier next time, to try that. So
100%.
yeah.
Andrea, thank you so much for
Yeah.
coming and talking, sharing your expertise and your vulnerability. It was wonderful. I've got all these neurochemicals going right now just because of
I know,
of a
it's fun to
good,
talk
fun
about.
conversation. So,
Thanks for having me.
of course. Thanks everyone for listening. Tune in for future episodes where we'll work together to increase our mental health momentum.